The year is 1997. I've just gotten home from school, and it's time to sink into the world of Ultima Online, a game that becomes my home for the next few years. And you're probably wondering what this has to do with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but the same sense of wonderment that I had as a kid playing through the vast and open world of Ultima Online is a high that I've chased ever since. A true choose-your-own adventure in a world where you can shape your success via craftsmanship, thievery, or being a knight in shining armor. All this is accessible in not just Ultima Online, but in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, albeit without the fantasy. As a result, I haven't put the game down ever since I was given an early access key by Warhorse Studios. In this video today, I want to give you my first impressions after 20 some hours in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. In my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge in my videos, let me give you the down and dirty of what I'll be going into. Let me start by saying I never understood the hype for KCD 1 or Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. It just didn't click for me. Sure, maybe I bounced off the early portions of the game and you can make the claim about patience, but you'd be wrong. I was raised in the crucible of Ultima Online, Final Fantasy single digits, EverQuest, Lineage 2. Trust me, I know grinding. But a game that doesn't capture you from the start is like a show that takes half of its seasons to warm up. Now, coming into the second game, so much of that has been improved upon. The combat feels exciting and you get a taste of it within your first 30 minutes of playing. Learning every system is intoxicating. There's just so much to consume. I'm not very far into the game from a story perspective, but I've been having such a great time going off the beaten path and listening to the throwaway conversations of NPCs to learn of new adventures, completing side quests that are interesting and unique in the same way Witcher 3 had, journeying into the countryside to find bandit camps for loot hauls like Skyrim, or becoming a character that specializes in all the things I have a genuine interest in versus a linear system, just like Ultima Online. The game doesn't hold your hand, and I don't mean that in the hardcore elitist way that is oft jammed down our throats by gaming publications or YouTubers. Nay, I mean that in the way that the game is very open to you to explore and choose how you want to go about it. There's enough to keep you on track, but there's no rails to this thing. Go hog wild. All this is done under the beautiful veneer of a game that is visually stunning in a grounded medieval RPG that doesn't rely on fantasy to whisk you away. Has anything changed from game 1 to game 2? I don't think fundamentally it has, but rather Warhorse Studios has learned how to deliver its amazing game at a better pace with fine-tuned systems and fleshed out mechanics that hook you from the start. But that's the too long didn't watch this entire video. Feel free to shut the video down or jump ahead to any part that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline in the description. And if you are heading out, and if this video did indeed help you, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. Lastly, don't forget to check me out on Twitch, linked in the pinned comment and description. Let's get started on Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has turned me into a believer. The first big subject I want to hit is probably the one that people are most curious about, and it's the combat system. The combat system in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is really, truly, apparently not that much different than Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. But from what I understand, from what's been explained to me, I've been doing a lot of conversationing, is that a term? A lot of talking with Strat Gaming, and he has broken down how KCD 1's mechanics have changed from KCD 2 so I can better understand stuff. And he's got a lot of really great videos on this subject, so please go check him out. But in KCD 1, it was not necessarily very easy to switch between multiple targets when you were outnumbered in a fight, right? When you're not just doing a 1v1. And also there was a lot of clunk and jank that was associated with the early portions of getting into combat. And this kind of had to do with the fact that you were a peasant who had no prior combat experience. So narrative portions aside, we're talking more about the consumption of combat in the game and how it's different in KCD 2. This just helps me from having to say Kingdom Come Deliverance every time I want to reference those games. In 2, again, I don't want to spoil anything of what happens. You are immediately introduced to combat into this game. And I think that's huge because it immediately kind of gets you off the ground in a way that you understand how combat works and how it kind of interplays with your character. You'll go through some events, go through some initial tutorials, and you'll have that same experience that you had in KCD 1, where after you complete the prologue, you'll have to go to someone to get some more combat training to get even better. But the getting even better portion is just that he kind of tells you a little bit more about how combos work and stuff like that. The game is fully accessible in its combat right out the gate, which KCD 1 required you to go through that kind of initial preliminary tutorial process. So you can see from the footage that you're watching here, again, I'm rubbish at combat, and a lot of this I've just saved throughout my whole entire like 20 some hours. So it progressively gets better, but it's easy to simply shift in between targets by tapping the shift button. I can just quickly shift around to each individual target and quickly target them and just go through the ability to attack. It just is a more fine-tuned system where I don't feel like it's as hard to understand how to perfect block, how to do a riposte, how to parry, how to dodge, how to do all this stuff. It's unlocked right away for you. And it, again, does have to do with where your character is narratively and why they can do that at this point versus being a blacksmith's son who's never held a weapon in his life. So again, narrative things aside, the combat just feels so much tighter and so much better right out the gate. And it's nice that even though I don't have a ton of skill in the desired weapon that I want to use at a given moment, like my character right now is specializing more on swords, that I can just simply pick up any weapon. At least I have a base understanding. I'm going to really suck at it. Like, for example, I'm not good at marksmanship. So I'm over here like trying to aim down the bow with marksmanship and I'm just all over the place. But at least I understand the principles behind it. Or pole arms, for those of you that were hoping to get into stuff like bill hooks and spears and halberds, those are in the game. I'm not great with those, so it's harder for me to use them because my character is a little bit more cumbersome with them. But as I get better, as I unlock more skill and then thusly more perks, I can access how to use them at a better rate. So this ability to be poor at something is fine, but this ability to immediately jump into it, to understand the base of the system, to then get better at the system, and at the same time your character levels up within that system, so I get access to the perks, is so much more fluid in this game compared to the first game. Again, for the third time, narrative portion aside, that it allows me to really jump into the combat and be okay with sucking. Like, just be like, oh man, I'm terrible right now, but I know I'm going to get better. Versus the first game, I felt like I couldn't really, the combat system didn't excite me enough to want to get better. And I guess that's the kind of difference I feel between these two games. It feels so much stronger, so much better, so much more streamlined. The responsiveness feels a lot better, and the reading of the telegraphs of how each other fight, it just feels a lot more intuitive versus before. So I really appreciate the experience and jumping into the combat in game 2. And it's not astronomically different if you played game 1. You're going to be able to jump in and go, oh, dude, this feels so much tighter, versus a wild statement, versus if you're coming in for the first time, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I get this combat system. You're not going to bounce off of it as easy as I did in the first game. That's my experience from the combat system, how it just feels like a lot better of a system with a lot more of all of its little tiny tunings tuned just a little bit to make it a lot more presentable and a lot more fun. Now, one of the big systems I want to talk about is the systems and how they actually very much overlap and interact with each other in KCD2 versus KCD1. And this is one of the biggest things that's really drawn me into the game, is how much interaction exists amongst stuff like your stats, your secondary, well, your skills, combat, and what have you. So for example, here, if I'm using a sword, I click over here, it says stuff like swordsmanship experience is gained primarily by fighting using the appropriate weapons. Sword-like weapons include hunting swords, short swords, long swords, and sabers. Let's go back to stats. Let's go to strength. Experience is primarily gained through combat. If you use if you use weapons that require higher strength levels, you will gain more experience. So you've got a lot of this really cool interaction that exists between strength and combat. Duh, right? Well, there's more to this, and it's outside of what you see here. That sounds so like crazy. But what I mean here is that if I am over encumbered, if I have just way too much items on me, like let's go over here. One more level over here. So my weight over here, 108 out of 162. If I were to put 168, let's just say, on my character, then my strength goes up and my vitality goes up. Both of those I start to get experience towards because my character is hauling this huge amount of, weight around. So it naturally increases these two. That's pretty sick. And if I'm low, below that, with lower armor on, with higher, with lower, not lower heavy armor, but like less heavy armor, lighter armor, and I'm more of like a light, stealthy character, then I get more agility just by simply moving around and being that type of way. Now, a big thing that I want to point out too, those coming from KCD1, is the way that speech works. Speech, of course, is just simply going to be given experience through, you gain experience primarily through conversations and using skill checks in them. Also, reading books will enrich your vocabulary and improve your rhetorical skills and argumentation. I said augmentation. So what does that come down to? We know that that worked like that before in the first one, but it's actually way better this time around. Usually in the first one, your skill checks were far and few between, and the ones that they were very like telegraphed. It always had kind of the same skill check. Well, this time you can see the secondary tab. This has a bunch of derived stats like charisma, conspicuousness, and stuff like that. But these dialogue stats are what's important. Persuasion, coercion, impression, domination, presence, intimidation. All these are kind of persona-based dialogue stats that are either going to increase or decrease based off of how you play the game, what kind of character you've got. And then you use those in conversation to try to glean a certain response or bit of information, or coerce, or just whatever it is. So maybe my character has very low strength and they're always in sparkling, clean, beautiful armor. Well, their intimidation's not going to be as awesome. This stat is derived from how good your armor and weapons are and how physically fit you are, and to a lesser, your strength, agility, and vitality levels, as well as whether you're dirty or bloodied. So that probably is going to fall more into presence. As you can see, I've got 14 presence and 11 intimidation right now. But I'm not going to be able to intimidate someone who is a skilled fighter. So there's a context to these dialogue stats. Maybe that skilled fighter, it's easier to appeal to their compassion through impression or through persuasion. Maybe they are some sort of just kind of like general rabble rouser in a tavern. Well, maybe they're going to respond better to coercion or domination or intimidation. Just kind of, if they're a troll, you troll them back. They'll respond to that. You use these dialogue stats not as a way to simply, I'm going to stack persuasion to be the highest stat and I'm only going to use persuasion. Well, if you're using persuasion against someone who's a very learned scholar, or maybe it's like another equally as charismatic character, persuasion's just not going to work. So you use these dialogue stats in a way that allows the systems to play along with themselves. All this overlap is so juicy. Like the skills work like that too. The combat works like that too. It's just having all these things play into one another in a really cool way. All the skills here with like craftsmanship and alchemy all like playing into stuff like your scholarship. So all this stuff plays so well together that it makes this really fun gameplay feedback loop where the more I contribute and play into one direction, the more it contributes and plays into another. And it makes me want to feed those systems back on themselves. And I think that this is a really cool way to really pull more out of the system that already exists, where in the first game, stuff was too isolated, too siloed, as I've said before. And this way I can really have fun jumping into each and all of those things. And I know that the inventory and management of your character was pretty wild in the first one. It's the same thing here, but I love this from, a quote unquote historical perspective of how this stuff all interplays with how that character would probably be dressed in those things, like a gambeson underneath their hauberk, or a coif, which is also known as a coif, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is coif, that's the actual one, which is underneath your helmet, and having to have these little bits of realism kind of help that overlapping system and mechanic. For those that have see this little guy right here, flower power. Well, let me just point this out. Survival. Flower power here. If you have more than 30 fresh or dried herbs in your inventory, your charisma will count as 2 more. Those that played the first game are very familiar with this one. Also, where is it? There's one for, if you grab herbs, it will give you, here it is. When collecting herbs, it's even called the same one. When collecting herbs, you'll gain a small amount of experience and strength skills. So it required perks before to turn this stuff into an overlapping system in the first game. This game, it is already like that. And on top of it, this is not as disgusting of an ability in this game. For those who are, again, coming from the first one, it doesn't completely break things. And charisma too is interesting. So my charisma value is 12. What you'll see here is all these things are cumulative. So, but like, they're not cumulative, sorry, they're averages. So it'll say, charisma represents how good you look. It plays a role when using skill checks and trading. Your total charisma is the average of the charisma values of the individual pieces of your clothing or armor that are visible. So this allows you to not just simply stack charisma by saying, oh, this has got a bunch of charisma, I'm going to do this. You get more granularity by stacking individual items that are really high with charisma value and items that are not for certain gains and benefits here, right? So for example here, looking at this headpiece, looking at this headpiece, the charisma value on it is 17 versus this one is 12. So you mix and match these things to weigh against, do I want the defense of them, the whatever it is of them, or this one here, the Berger Perpon. This is a charisma of 20 versus this is my Halberg, which is a charisma of 6. I can only use one or the other in the place of that location. So I'm sorry, that's a Gambison? I didn't even know that. Look at me. Look, I'm so terrible at this. You can see right here, body tunic versus body chainmail. Where it goes on the character is represented over here. So there's so many of these overlapping things that makes it so fun to jump into them and try and make them feed into one another. So with all these systems, with all this playing around, all this combat, there just comes a ton of freedom. Your character is dropped into a massive map right out the start. And this is a different map than the first game. So you're really going to be going through a whole brand new set of experiences. And with that, you get to explore as you see fit. You can talk to NPCs who will tell you things like, oh yeah, I overturned a wagon over there, and they'll give you a point of interest on the map that you can go explore. Or there's NPCs that are going to give you quests. I've got a really cool quest to go do some stuff with a bull. That sounded kind of wild when you say it like that, but I promise it's kind of a fun little situation that's got going on. And I'm trying not to spoil anything so you can experience this in your own way. But what I like about this is that this freedom of trying to approach the game at an early point versus getting there over 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, which I was doing with KCD1, is really fun because I get to just simply, okay, the prologue's done and over with. I get a sense of what's going on in the game. Let me just go and do whatever I want, which is, what you had with Skyrim. You do with that 30, 45 minute opening prologue, and then you're just kind of off to the races. You do the same thing in Witcher. And again, you do the same thing in the first game. It just was less interesting to me. And on top of it, that freedom allows me to then play how I want. Right now, my character is a swordsman that also uses a bow, so some sort of ranger style of character. And I'm ranging around, picking up tons of herbs, selling those herbs, finding bandits, killing bandits, selling all the stuff I find from those bandits, and then just kind of rinse and repeating that while I also do quests to figure out more of the game's systems. I've just now found out how to get, maybe I stole the horse, who knows? And stealing things is another big part of this. Strat Gaming, he was telling me that a lot of his character's gameplay has been stealth, archer, stealing, archery, stuff like that. And he's gone through a whole bunch of stuff within the game that I haven't even touched on. And I'm already 20 hours in. And he was saying, oh, you did that? I haven't done anything like that yet, which is really cool. He's further in the game than me, but he hasn't experienced something that I've experienced in the first couple hours or first tens of hours, whatever you want to call it. So that experience of being able to play through a game like this in a very, every single experience is different type of way is really part of the intoxicating nature of this game, and it's why it's been so hard for me to put it down. I'm always finding another little piece of armor and a little piece of weaponry that is better than mine to improve upon stuff, giving that little small bit of dopamine to keep me going and looking for more stuff. Oh, I just found some materials and I found a recipe. I'm going to go use my blacksmithing skills, which is another thing, right? I can play into all this craftsmanship if I want. I don't need to touch all the herbalism and craftsmanship in the game if I don't want to. And that was a real big portion of KCD1 because it was kind of a min-max way of playing. You spent the first 4 or 5 hours of the game getting every single herb in the first town because it gave you so many benefits that would allow you to really power level the initial portions of the game. And what I like about this is I'm clearly not looking up guides. There's none of that exists right now. I'm jumping in and I'm going crazy and just doing whatever I want. It took me some time to get my brain in that motion. I will say that because I think I was approaching it too narratively. I wanted to just go do quests and I was like, wait, what am I doing? What am I doing? This is not the way you're supposed to play this game. You're supposed to play this game at your own pace, at whatever you want to do. And it immediately switched in my mind when I was originally going from, I just don't like this game. I don't like this series. I don't know if I'm ever going to click with it, to flipping that little switch in my brain to go, oh, daddy like. So in doing so, it opened up so much freedom of what the game offers you across the ways that you can play the game, the ways that you can build your character, the way you can craft all these things or not. Like I said, You don't need to interact with herbalism and crafting potions if you don't want to. I have not crafted a single save potion, and I have tons of save potions to take advantage of. And save potions are how you save the game in between points that the game A either auto saves for you, B you rest and save the game, or C you save and quit. You can kind of game the system by saving and quitting and reboot the game every time you want. But the freedom that is afforded to you in this second game is so fun. And that freedom too lends itself into those systems I spoke about. You can use those systems to either work to your advantage or, well, maybe kind of use those systems to build a certain character that you maybe thought you weren't going to play. Because as I play more as this kind of swordsman archer, I just got a shield. And getting a shield changes the way combat works for you, because now it's a lot easier for you to deal with multiple targets at once. I don't need to stealth into situations. I can be a little bit more of a bruiser now. So those things are interesting. That freedom has completely changed now how I'm going to start playing for the next couple hours until maybe I get another thing that changes. Oh, I got a really good bow. So now I'm going to just kind of focus on that for a little bit. There's so many little things that kind of get thrown your way that really enable you to play this game however the hell you want. So with all that kind of being said, it comes down to my overall impressions on the game. Again, this isn't a review. I don't have enough time under the hood to really give you a substantial review. I don't know all the big pitfalls and shortcomings. Maybe these systems are super intoxicating from the start, but once I jump into 20 more hours, is this the same 20 hours on repeat? And I'm just kind of like, oh man, this is kind of just a lot of the same thing. I don't know yet. I do not know. But from what I can tell you, and to kind of go back on what I was talking about at the very beginning of this video, that wonderment that I had jumping through this game matches a lot of the wonderment that I had playing Ultima Online. And I know they're not the same game. I know they're not online games. I know Sosaria is not 15th century Bohemia. I know that they are not the same. I know there's no dragons. I know there's no Edens. But I have a good fucking time. I'm having a great time jumping into all this nuance, and I'm having a great time being like, should I steal from this guy right now? Should I rob this corpse? Should I get into a kerfuffle with these humans right now? There's just so much that I can do that I feel like there's nothing that's really barring me from doing it. To use a comparison, I think is very easily drawn with this game and a lot of other, or another kind of mainstream game. This game truly does feel like a medieval Red Dead Redemption 2, but not fucking annoying. Red Dead Redemption 2, when I first played it, I bumped into someone and goes, that's assault. And then I was wanted by the sheriff, and I had to go run all the way over to find a train station to mail the post, to pay my bounty. It pissed me off. I bounced off the game way too quickly because the game was realistic to an annoying degree. And there is a lot of realism in this game. There is a lot of slower pace to this game. And I think that's an important thing that gamers should know before they really want to pick up KCD2. The game is slower, the game is difficult, and the game, again, like I said before, it doesn't hold your hand, but not in a negative way for all three of those things. The pacing fits the character who is not really the best at anything, right? He's not, you're not playing this knight in shining armor who's been the champion of a court. You're not playing that character. You're playing a blacksmith's son who is kind of like a glorified man-at-arms bodyguard to not a hapless, but like a noble dude. Like, not really, like, he's not like a significant character, that's for sure. So you aren't someone who's amazing to start. So that kind of frames how you will approach this. And from the slow pace of it too, it allows you to build an appreciation for all the things that interlap within this game. I think if the game was faster paced, you would blow through systems and never use them. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to use that one. I'm already way too far away from it. Or maybe my character's just progressed too far to tap into it. Like, say, for example, you're playing World of Warcraft and you start and you discover that blacksmithing exists when your character's like level 50. You're like, I'm not going to touch that now. No thanks. That's way too far back. So the pacing allows you, and the game definitely holds your hand, but not in the way that it guides you. It guides you to every little system and shows you how those systems work, and then says, you now have the tools, go play with them however you want, which is what I really like about it. It doesn't hold your hand in the sense that there's a bunch of things on the compass that show you where unexplored stuff is, or there's not a bunch of things on the map that show you where unexplored things are. Those things don't exist. You run around and then you discover them, and boom, yeah, you've got them on your map. but they won't be there until you discover them yourself. So it gives you a lot of agency and a lot of impetus to go explore and color in this map that otherwise is a beautiful, cool, like kind of medieval rendition of a map. But that kind of lack of guidance is not that hardcore mentality that I think, like I said, is jammed down our throats. That lack of guidance is really cool because it's like coloring in a coloring book in whatever colors you want, versus like, hey, here's a coloring book and a blank page. Draw the picture, then color it in, asshole. It's like, no, I can't draw. So I enjoy that this game does lead you into things enough that you can then go about them however you want. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like across my next 20, 30, 40 hours in this game. So I'm absolutely loving my experience of KCD2. And I put that last video out, on the game, having already started playing it. Then they told me like, oh yeah, you can release like a first impressions video. I was like, well, shit. Okay, now I guess I'll do this. So I love this game. I'm loving this game, barely into it. And I know there's so much more under the hood. I'm so excited to crack into. So I don't know if there's gonna be any kind of heraldry play in this game, but I hope there is, because heraldry is a really kind of big portion of the medieval times. But at the same time, it wouldn't make much sense why you would have heraldry as a blacksmith's son who's barely even anyone of repute, let alone a knight. So we'll see how that goes throughout the gameplay and play of everything. But just the way that you can just do everything so granular in this game, it'd be really cool to tap into that system. But that's neither here nor there. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Are you excited for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2? Were you on the fence, and did this give you a little bit more ammunition to push one way or the other? Have you seen other videos about the game and this kind of helped color in the in-between? Whatever it is, let it be known in the comment section below. I want people to have as much information about this game before they jump into it so they can know, is this really going to be a game that's going to be for them? And are they just going to bounce off of it like they did the first one? Or are they going to really appreciate it like they didn't appreciate the first one, which was me, right? I didn't appreciate the first one because I bounced off it too quickly. This game really allowed me to appreciate all the awesome systems and games and all the awesome systems and mechanics of this now series in a beautiful way. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.